Out of the deep I call unto thee, O Lord. Consider well the sound of my longing soul.
A major part of General Convention is not only business, but being a witness. The Bishops United Against Gun Violence organization sponsored a march through downtown Salt Lake City. This is what over 1,000 people experienced. This is what was behind the scenes: 14 permits, 2 months' work, and volunteer Pat Peterson.
The word I keep coming back to over and over again is gratefulness. Grateful to God for God's help. I'm grateful to the people who helped logistically put this together. Pat Peterson was simply wonderful in all the work that she gave in order to make sure that logistically speaking, this march would happen. The time and energy she put into it, and all the things that only she really could do, and she did unselfishly and enthusiastically to help us.
The march was of particular witness for the bishop. He himself is a victim of gun violence.
It took me 2 months to recover from that injury of a point-blank shot to the abdomen. 2 months in the hospital with 60 pints of blood and a loss of over 40 pounds, which took me down to 98 pounds. As I stood there, I said, we are making a witness on a very important issue or concern, and that is the level of gun violence. And we're standing here as one body of people across denominational religious lines, across even opinions of people about gun control itself, all standing together saying we need to curb the violence that is committed in our country with the use of firearms.
It will be one of the legacies of the week. The words of witness after witness are now repeated all over the internet.
I'm always hearing people say, if I would have had a gun, I would have stopped him. I'm telling you right now, if I would have been armed with a gun, there's nothing I could have done to change anything. The outcome would have been exactly the same. There was no time to react. There was no time to even understand what was happening.
Every 7 to 10 years, 1 million Americans are shot by firearms. 1 million emergency room visits. 1 million families grieving. And may or may not be captured.
And of course, the business. Indeed, the business of the church. That is what our deputation faithfully and prayerfully studied for the last 3 years in preparation of the 10 days in Salt Lake City. This will be remembered as the convention that reorganized the structure of the church, and a canonical change, eliminating language that defines marriage as between a man and a woman, and authorized 2 new marriage rites for either same-gender or opposite-gender marriage. It also was the General Convention that elected Bishop Michael Curry as the next presiding bishop. The election in the House of Bishops took place in our own Cathedral Church of St. Mark. The host cathedral of the host diocese was a place of history.
History was made with the election of the first African American bishop, but also the first bishop ever elected on the very first ballot, with over 100 votes more than the next person. This was history, and to say that it happened in our cathedral is something that I think will go in our history books and will be a moment of pride for a whole diocese, because it was here that it took place. It was here that it happened. And I couldn't have been more proud and grateful at that moment that I could be a bishop or the bishop here of the Episcopal Diocese of Utah, and happened at our cathedral. In the pews sat all of the bishop, in the pews of which I have sat over and over again, repeatedly attending worship.
Bishop Curry met the church and the world at a press conference.
Would you describe yourself as an evangelical? Is that a term you use?
You remember it was on the day of Pentecost when the Spirit came down and a group of Palestinian Jewish disciples began to speak in languages that were not their own, and peoples of many nations and different kinds and stripes were able to hear the good news of God and Jesus. And it is that Pentecost. I mean, don't have anybody say, I'm praying for some Pentecostal Episcopalians. But what I really mean by that, let me tell you what I mean by that before I get in trouble. This is just the first day. What I mean But by Pentecostal Episcopal, I mean people whose lives are really living in the Spirit of God, the Spirit of God's love, the Spirit of God's embrace that reflects Jesus. And when that happens, we find ourselves growing, as I say, more in the direction of God's dream.
Again, sent to all from our webcast. From that moment on, Bishop Curry was a rock star. He spoke at gatherings such as this one for ERD.
This really is a joyous celebration of remarkable and faithful and selfless service.
He spoke at the Bishops United Against Gun Violence March.
Y'all got to go forth into this world and proclaim that love is the only way. Go forth and proclaim that we will end the scourge of violence. We will make poverty history, and we will end racism, because we all got one God who created us, and we are all children of that one God, and we are brothers and sisters one of another, and all lives matter.
Amen. And of course, he spoke to the House of Deputies. At worship,
now I got one word for you. If you don't remember anything else that I say this morning, it's the first word in the Great Commission: go. Don't do it yet, but go. And the reason I lift up that word go, because we are the Jesus movement. Go.
It was a great summer of memories all throughout the Salt Palace. Down the hall was the Episcopal Church Women's Triennial. It was also an inspiring event, and one where our diocese shined. They are great memories witnessed by our diocese, our volunteers, and our friends. It was all a community, often outside of what the general public saw. For example, our San Esteban congregation created a community around each day's lunchtime. The congregation provided great lunches for friends at reasonable prices that one couldn't find in downtown Salt Lake City. This was especially helpful for deputies who had just taken costly trips to get to General Convention.
So every day we see our brothers and sisters from Province 9 and other visitors from Mexico, from Brazil, from El Salvador, and then the deputies from the Dominican Republic and Honduras and Puerto Rico, and so it's it's a fabulous gathering. So I think it's been very it's been a very hospitable gesture, and it's been just a great service.
Indeed, it was community and a way to personally meet our Episcopal brothers and sisters. For example, we were all thrilled to hear Sandra Modas at the worship service. It was at one of the San Esteban lunches that our congregation got to know her.
I think it is just, like it says in the Bible, the joy of the Lord is always with us, and they will know us by our love.
In and out of the limelight, our diocese was there. Now, if you were to ask what was the defining moment of the 10 days the church came to town, it would be this: Utah Night. It was the Utah Showcase. It started once again with Utah hosting dinner. It was Utah's heritage of interfaith at its best. For a couple of hours, a packed tabernacle heard and saw the best that we had to show. People came from different faiths, all to show Episcopalians what we do in Utah.
A feeling of sheer gratefulness. It was a dream come true, something that I have wanted to do for the longest period of time, to show people that relationships between differing religious bodies can be harmonious even if we do not agree on basic theological points or basic social stances. That we can have relationships that are warm and positive and get work done together. That was a showcase not only of the whole state of Utah and relationships, but the great volunteer spirit and cooperation that exists here in Utah. And I wanted the people around the church to see that.
You know, when Salt Lake City was picked to host the convention, there were rumblings. There was concern. People had all the stereotypical thoughts about Utah. Even on the first day, we all heard stories that you have heard. But by the end, it was the best general convention ever.
It was a wonderful opportunity to gather here. The facilities here were excellent, and also people's hospitality. More than anything, what I take in my heart is that the hospitality of those from Utah, for all of those that came from all over the United States and abroad. Not only from the Episcopal Diocese of Utah, but so many volunteers from the Church of the Latter-day Saints. So I'm very, very appreciative for that hospitality.
What it gave to me is, personally, the privilege, really, to show to the rest of the church the Diocese of Utah in the state of Utah, of which I am so very, very proud. I've spoken about it, certainly, at the House of Bishops and other venues about Utah and why I'm so happy here. And this was an opportunity for me to really show that to the rest of the church and for them to see it firsthand and experience it firsthand. Many people said we ought to hold every general convention in the Diocese of Utah. And all I can say about that is, isn't that wonderful that the people who came to be with us during this time experienced it and learned why you and I love being here so very much.
And then as quickly as it started, it was nearly over. They tore out the exhibit hall, meaning there would only be a couple of days left.
Relieved, excited. This convention was my second convention. The first convention I ever went to was in Indianapolis, and it was very exciting. And then knowing that our little state, our little diocese was going to host the next one, I had a myriad of emotions. I was excited, I was nervous. We all worked so very hard to have a successful convention. I think we were successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Proud of all the volunteers, of the people that coordinated the volunteers, Of all the people who were volunteers here in Utah to help put on convention, everybody that worked for the musical event at the Tabernacle, for the Utah booth that people were just raving about how beautifully it was done, what a wonderful job that Vicki and Dirk had done on putting that together. I could not be prouder of the people that worked on this.
It seemed like 3 years of waiting had gone by quickly. It seemed like 10 days was just a blink of the eye. Well, maybe not for Russ and Nancy. It was the time we hosted the church. It will always be a defining point in our history. And most importantly, it will be a defining moment in our lives as Episcopalians.
This courtesy resolution gives thanks for the hospitality offered us by the Episcopal Diocese of Utah, Salt Lake City, the Dean and staff of St. Mark's Cathedral, where our bishops gathered for the election of the presiding bishop, and to the LDS Church for their welcome and hospitality. On behalf of the committee, I move that the House adopt this resolution.
All those in favor of Resolution A191, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The resolution is adopted.
Thanks be to God.